Mark Carney just met with Donald Trump, and of course, Trump big brothered him the entire time. It was embarrassing for Carney, and I've seen Cope on both sides of the media now saying, oh, well, he set the tone for the meeting. He really stood up to Trump, or, oh, you can't stand up to Trump because you have to really play to his ego, and Carney did such a good job as that. What we're seeing in real time is the liberal boomers were duped, and Carney's not the guy who's going to stand up to Trump. In this meeting, he roasted Trudeau, he roasted Freeland, and he answered questions from press as if Carney was not in the room. He was actively saying he was trying to take out Canadian business and pretending like Carney's opinion didn't matter. It was pretty wild on some of their exchanges, so let's get into it. I wanted to start off with this clip just so you can see how, mainstream media is already saying he stood up to Trump and set the tone of the meeting when Trump basically brushed it off.
And CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Melbourne joins us now from right outside the White House. Joy, great to see you this afternoon. Before we talk about the overall tone of this meeting, can we just start with that moment and how the Prime Minister had a pushback on what the President was suggesting once again on Canada being the 51st state?
Look, that was an extraordinary moment. To me, that was the moment of this meeting. It set the tone. It really did. Everyone wondered how the Prime Minister would react because Donald Trump is not backing down from his rhetoric, not backing down from his threats of taking over Canada, the 51st state. He said as much just as recently as Sunday. But the Prime Minister had a great comeback because there was praise, but there was a punch. Praising, you're a real estate guy. You know some things are not for sale, like Buckingham Palace. Again, hitting Donald Trump, with one of the things that he so admires, which is royalty, and then saying some things are not for sale, and you know that, and we're not for sale. Canadians needed to hear that. Yeah. Americans needed to hear that because he constantly says it, and it's insulting and it's belittling, and it shouldn't set the tone for what needs to be serious negotiations between.
You know, it's funny because they said, oh, that was Mark Carney's punch, and he really stood up to Trump and set the tone with that statement. We'll get to the part where he replies with that because not even a minute later, Trump's showing he doesn't care what Carney said.
Thank you very much, everybody. It's a great honor to have Prime Minister Mark Carney with us. As you know, just a few days ago, he won a very big election in Canada. And I think I was probably the greatest thing that happened to him, but I can't take full credit. His party was losing by a lot, and he ended up winning. So I really want to congratulate him. It was probably one of the greatest comebacks in the history of politics, maybe even greater than mine. But I want to just congratulate you. That was a great election, actually. We were watching it with interest, and I think Canada chose a very talented person, a very good person. As we spoke before the election quite a few times.
There's a couple interesting smaller comments there because in that exchange, obviously, you have to be polite, you have to be cordial. That's politics. You're not going to start off a meeting by being like, I'm going to take this guy on. But he even says, like, I'm the best thing to ever happen to that guy, which is true. We all know the only reason Carney got elected is because of his anti-Trump rhetoric. But then Trump even says there's a couple comments that he makes that are really interesting when he goes, well, we spoke before the election, actually quite a few times. Well, I thought there was only one phone call between them. So what does he mean quite a few times? Like, what were these calls, these other discussions that they had before the election? I just found that interesting, and I have not seen anybody talk about his sort of in-between comments. And he makes a small one later on that I want to talk about because I was like, that sounded really specific.
Ran a really great race. I watched the debate. I thought you were excellent, and I think we have a lot of things in common. We have some tough points to go over, and that'll be fine. We're going to also be discussing Ukraine, Russia, the war, because Mark wants it ended as quickly as I do. I think it has to end. We had some very good news last night.
I do find it interesting that he said that he watched the debate because I wonder, Trump just says things sometimes that are not possibly true. Some people might say lies. He just fires from the cuff. And, did he watch the debate? That'd be interesting to know.
Your words?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I'm on the edge of my seat, actually. But thank you for your hospitality and above all for your leadership. You're a transformational president, the focus on the economy with a relentless focus on the American worker, securing your borders, ending the scourge of fentanyl, and other opioids, and securing the world. And I've been elected with my colleagues here, with the help of my colleagues here. I'm going to spread the credit to transform Canada. With a similar focus on the economy, securing our borders, again on fentanyl, much greater focus on defense and security, securing the Arctic and developing the Arctic. And the history of Canada and the U.S. is we're stronger when we work together, and there's many opportunities to work together. And I look forward to, addressing some of those issues that we have, but also finding those areas of mutual cooperation so we can move forward.
So, not going to hold anything against Carney there for being complimentary. This is supposed to be a positive exchange between the two leaders. However, very interesting that Carney starts this off by saying, yeah, we will crack down on fentanyl, one of the reasons for tariffs. We will secure the Arctic. We are going to work in this relationship. Canada works so much better when it works together with America. These are all things that he basically had no interest in during the campaign, or actively was saying he was going to avoid. He was going to change the relationship with the US. We are going to reach out to these global partners. He was going to reshape the Canadian economy, all of these things. And again, these are just opening statements, so I'm not saying like this is law now, but it's just interesting that he specifically referenced the security of the nation, which was a big problem with military spending, all of these things. I get it, you got to be complimentary, but those things, he didn't have to say that we are going to secure the Arctic. He didn't have to say, about the fentanyl. He could have just been complimentary.
Is USMCA dead?
No, it was actually very effective, and it's still very effective, but people have to follow it. So, that's been a problem. People haven't followed it. But it was a transitional step a little bit. And as you know, it terminates fairly shortly. It gets renegotiated very shortly. But I thought it was a very positive step from NAFTA. NAFTA was the worst trade deal in the history of our country, probably in the history of the world. And this was a transitional deal, and we'll see what happens. We're going to be starting to possibly renegotiate that if it's even necessary. I don't know that it's necessary anymore, but it served a very good purpose. And the biggest purpose it served is we got rid of NAFTA. NAFTA was a very unfair deal for the United States.
So what he was saying there too, with how the USMCA agreement expires shortly, there's a sort of check-in period, I guess, in 2026. Technically, the agreement is until 2036, I think, but there's like a check-in period so that all of the groups can meet and technically change the agreement or stop it, I believe. So found that really interesting. Right here, he makes another one of those small comments that I was like, that's kind of strange. Why did he say that? So let's get into that little comment here. And you guys can comment down below what you think he means by this.
When he wasn't given much of a chance, and he ran a really great campaign. He did a really great debate. I think that debate was very helpful. I was going to raise my hand. I don't know if that's good or bad. I shouldn't say that. That might hurt you. But no, he ran a really great election, I thought. And yeah, something could happen. Something could happen.
So there you go. He basically said, I wanted to raise my hand, but, I shouldn't say that because that might hurt you. So it's pretty clear because people always paint Trump as like just this big dummy blowhard who just says anything. And don't get me wrong, he has some hilarious moments that I love. But you can see he knew what was happening during the election. He knew what his statements about Canada, about the leaders, about the election would do. And he was being pretty specific with his statements that entire time. I'm just saying, how much involvement did he have, connected to Carney before to help him get in? Who knows? He knows, I shouldn't say that. That would hurt you. So he was probably being told to not say things during that time. And I just found it so interesting that it was just like let slip in this little comment here. And here, one of the reporters asks a question about if he still wants Canada to be the 51st state.
It takes two to tango, right? But no, I do. I mean, I believe it would be a massive tax cut for the Canadian citizens. You get free military, you get tremendous medical cares and other things. There would be a lot of advantages, but it would be a massive tax cut. And it's also a beautiful, as a real estate developer, I'm a real estate developer at heart. When you get rid of that artificially drawn line, somebody drew that line many years ago with like a ruler, just a straight line right across the top of the country. When you look at that beautiful formation when it's together, I'm a very artistic person, but when I looked at that beauty, I said that's the way it was meant to be. But I do feel it's much better for Canada, but we're not going to be discussing that unless somebody wants to discuss it. I think that there are tremendous benefits to the Canadian.
I do agree with what he's saying, though. When you look at the map, you can clearly see that North America would look great if it was all connected. And again, it was just random lines. But it was funny because you see Carney, you may have just seen it there. Carney tried to pipe in, and he does that a few times and is just not assertive enough.
Canadian citizens, tremendously lower taxes, free military, which honestly we give you essentially anyway because we're protecting Canada if you ever had a problem. But I think
the small language of him just kind of reaching over, oh, we're protecting Canada if you ever had a problem, just kind of like Big Brother and Carney, like, don't worry, we'll take care of you, little bro.
It would really be a wonderful marriage because it's two places that get along very well. They like each other a lot.
Well, if I may, as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever. But the opportunity is in the partnership and what we can build together. And we have done that in the past. And part of that, as the President just said, is with respect to our own security. And my government is committed for a step change in our investment in Canadian security and our partnership. And I'll say this as well, that the President has revitalized international security, revitalized NATO, and us playing our full weight in NATO, and that will be part of it.
So again, him giving Trump a compliment, there's a lot of politics going on here, but he is admitting here that Trump has been a huge point in Canada changing its military spending goals and being like, yeah, you're right, we do have to contribute. Yeah, you're right, we probably should get some defense spending going. So it's really funny to see, Mark Carney's tone just completely change when he's in the room with Trump. Again, some credit for politics, but it's like he's this meek little guy who's like, yeah, give credit to Trump for all this stuff. So who knows? I'm sure there's going to be the counter argument of like, he's just sweet playing him so he can hit him with the knockout punch. And, that was the knockout punch that they said that he gave during this thing that set the tone for the meeting. I met with the owners of Canada. I'm assuming he means general Canadians. Canada is not for sale, will never be for sale. So that was his tone-setting statement that the mainstream media was so hype about. It's like, all right, that was the full thing that you got. That's him standing up to Trump. Because in a few seconds, Trump's about to say, well, never say never. I don't believe you.
I must say, Canada is stepping up the military participation because Mark knew, they were low, and now they're stepping it up, and that's a very important thing. But never say never. Never say never.
See, that's what he keeps doing stuff like that, which makes me laugh because, so the media was convenient enough to say, oh, well, Mark Carney set the tone by saying that. He erased what he just said by saying, well, never say never. I don't believe you just yet. He stood up to Trump. Well, because Trump makes a point of saying never say never about this specific topic multiple times.
Saying that what would it take to get the tariffs off of Canada?
Well, we'll be talking about different things. We want to protect our...
If you didn't hear that, he asked, what would it take to get the tariffs off of Canada?
Our automobile business, and so does Mark. But we want to make the automobiles, and we want to, we have a tremendous abundance of energy, more than any country. We have, just in Alaska alone, ANWR has been reopened now. ANWR is probably the largest find anywhere in the world. They say it's larger than Saudi Arabia. I don't know, but it's a lot. But we have tremendous amounts of energy. Other countries don't. We're both lucky in that way. They have energy, we have energy. We have more than we can ever use, and more than we could ever sell, actually, and you have the same thing. So we're two countries that are very lucky. If you look at China, they don't have that. It's a big disadvantage. Other countries, most countries don't have. Most countries don't have that. So Canada and us, we have a lot of a lot of advantages over other places.
When you consider what Mr. Carney just said, that Canada is not for sale, does this make the discussion a little more difficult to start on?
No, not at all. No, not at all. No, time will tell. It's only time. But I say, never say never.
His delivery there is so good on the never say never. It made me laugh. I want to watch that again.
But I say, never say never.
Never say never.
Many things that were not doable, and they ended up being doable, and only doable in a very friendly way. But if it's to everybody's benefit, you know, Canada loves us and we love Canada. That's, I think, the number one thing that's important. But we'll see. I mean, over time, we'll see what happens.
Obviously, I think it's important to remember we've seen a lot of heated discussion around 51st state, Canada becoming America, all of that stuff. And I think a lot of it is obviously coming down to how poor Canadian leadership has been for the last 10 years. We've had horrible leadership, and that's not just from the federal government. It's in a lot of provincial governments, municipal, all of that stuff. We've seen the freedom, America doing well, all that stuff. And he's right about to get into roasting Freeland and, you know, talking about how she was ruining things. So they know, we know, and it's not like everybody was like really hoping America was going to take over until Canada seemingly felt like it's being run into the ground and losing its identity. Because whenever I have the discussion and they're like, well, Canada will never be America because we need to defend Canada. What is Canada? What is a Canadian? What is the idea we're defending? If you can't defend the idea of Canada to me, then why wouldn't we partner with the US? Why wouldn't we want to partner and be part of the largest economy in the world who's going to keep us safe with their military, all of these things? Because it would be a benefit. And really, there is just a line. So there's a reason why people are starting to shift their focus on it. But let's get into him, you know, roasting Freeland. He asks for some more like clarification on the USMCA agreement, and you can't really hear it.
Behind you, please.
Clarifying something you said on USMCA. Is the U.S. prepared to walk away from that pact?
For what pact?
USMCA.
No.
Asking if he'll walk away.
It's fine. It's there. It's good. We use it for certain things. It's there. We have the USMCA is a good deal for everybody. I won't say this about Mark, but I didn't like his predecessor. I didn't like a person that worked for. She was terrible, actually. She was a terrible person. And she really hurt that deal very badly because she tried to take advantage of the deal and she didn't get away with it. You know what I'm talking about. But so, you know, I had a... It
didn't show the Mark Carney coverage there, but he makes like a kind of funny face when he you know who I'm talking about. Mark Carney's like, when he says that. And I just thought it's funny. He's just roasting Freeland here.
We had a bad relationship having to do with the fact that we disagreed with the way they viewed the deal. And we ended it. You know, we ended that relationship pretty much. The USMCA is great for all countries. It's good for all countries. We do have a negotiation coming up over the next year or so to adjust it or terminate it.
I'll say a word on USMCA, if I may, Mr. President. It is a basis for a broader negotiation. Some things about it are going to have to change. And part of the way you've conducted these tariffs has taken advantage of existing aspects of USMCA. So it's going to have to change. There's other elements that are come, and that's part of what we're going to discuss.
We're about to get into a lot of the answers where Trump shows like, hey, you know, there's nothing Carney can do to change my mind on these tariffs. Like, there's no way that I'm going to listen to him. He actually gets, that's where Trump, of course, all of these meetings have to start polite. The exchanges have to be friendly and all of that. But the end is where Trump really started to lay down the law against Carney. And he was saying, hey, we're actively trying to destroy Canadian businesses and, you know, Canadian industry because we want it. And he's saying it while Carney's sitting right beside him. But this part I found funny, like just showing Trump commanding the room. He makes a few jokes about Gavin Newsom where he says his name incorrectly on purpose, clearly taking shots. And Carney laughs at like a few of Trump's jokes here.
Nor was in California a little train going from San Francisco to Los Angeles that's being run by Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. Did you ever hear of Gavin Newsom? He has got, that train is...
Like, I like that made Carney laugh. Did you ever hear about Gavin Newsom? And he just knows he said the name wrong on purpose, and Carney's clearly trying not to laugh at Gavin Newsom.
The worst cost overrun I've ever seen. It's like totally out of control. So then they said, all right, we won't go into San Francisco. We'll stop 25 miles short. And we won't go into Los Angeles. We'll stop 25 miles short. It's hundreds of billions of dollars for this stupid project that should have never been built. And then they realized that it would have been a lot less costly if we just gave limousine service back and forth and gave it free. They would have saved hundreds of billions of dollars.
It's a funny guy. He had Carney laughing right there. But media was convenient when leaving this out when talking about the tone of the meeting. This was in my personal opinion, the most important stuff said. What changes would you like to see to the USMCA agreement is what the reporter asked. And then here's where his answers are pretty firm.
Subtle changes, maybe. I don't even know if we're going to be dealing with USMCA. We're dealing more with concepts right now. Look, right now, we're doing trade. We have trade. They're paying a tariff on cars and steel and aluminum. And I think we have a baseline of 10% or something like that for the tariffs. But we're getting along very well. Right now, going no further, but we have an agreement. We did something with even parts. You want to discuss that, Howard, with respect to Canada, which helps Canada out?
Sure. So we've made an arrangement with the car companies that 15% of their USMCA parts are included, and then 15% of foreign parts from the manufactured suggested retail price are not tariffed to help domestic manufacturing really thrive.
So it gave them a chance to be able to build their car parts factories if they're going to. A lot of these companies already have factories, and what they have to do is just fill them out. But they're able to build them in the United States, so we gave them a pretty substantial period of time.
So that's what he was saying, which is one of the big changes, which a lot of people were kind of like, oh, you know, these people won't want to reinvest. They haven't had time. They don't know if Trump's going to be gone in a few years, so they're not going to reinvest these business. He's saying a lot of these companies already have factories. They just need to retool them. They needed a bit of time, so he's exempting parts during this time to give them more opportunity to not be punished while they're trying to rebuild. And I mean, if this is to work, like, that's pretty devastating. And he gets into it when he talks about it. It's pretty devastating for Canada, honestly. Like, that's a serious statement.
Mr. President, is there anything the Prime Minister can say to you today to change your mind on tariffing Canada?
Tariffing cars?
Tariffing Canada. Is there anything he could say to you in the course of your meetings with him today that would get you to lift tariffs on Canada?
No.
Why not?
Is there anything he can say to you to get you to lift the tariffs on Canada? Unequivocally, he says no. He just goes, no. There's nothing he can say. Carney's sitting there beside him like, oh no, like you can see his face. And Carney does respond, so we'll let Carney say his piece. I don't want to cut. I want to make sure that I'm going to give fair, balanced coverage. So anything Carney says in response that is obviously a good answer or responsible, I'm going to let him talk too. But Trump's clearly taking control of this whole meeting, and he's going to get into, you know, these answers here, which again, Carney's sitting right beside him as he says, yeah, we're trying to take out Canada.
That's the way it is.
What's your first thing? If Canadians don't want it, would you respect that?
Sure, I would. But this is not necessarily a one-day deal. This is over a period of time they have to make that decision. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may. Respectfully, Canadians' view on this is not going to change on the 51st day. Secondly, we are the largest client of the United States in the totality of all the goods. So we are the largest client of the United States. We have a tremendous auto sector between the two of us, and the changes that made have been helpful. 50% of a car that comes from Canada is American. That's not like anywhere else in the world. And to your question about is there one thing? No, this is a bigger discussion. There are much bigger forces involved, and this will take some time and some discussions, and that's why we're here, to have those discussions, and that is represented by who's sitting around the table.
See, the conflict is, and this is very friendly. We're not. This is not going to be like we had another little blow up with somebody else. That was a much different. This is a very friendly conversation, but
they're literally laughing about having a blow up with Zelensky in the office. Like, Zelensky's just catching strays. He's not even here, and they're still like, yeah, we had a little blow up. We had a little blow up.
We want to make our own cars. We don't really want cars from Canada. And we put tariffs on cars from Canada, and at a certain point, it won't make economic sense for Canada to build those cars. And we don't want steel from Canada because we're making our own steel, and we're having massive steel plants being built right now as we speak. We really don't want Canadian steel, and we don't want Canadian aluminum and various other things because we want to be able to do it ourselves. And we, because of, past thinking of people, we have a tremendous deficit with Canada. In other words, they have a surplus with us. And there's no reason for us to be subsidizing Canada. Canada's a place that will have to be able to take care of itself economically.
Funny enough, I'm not going to get into the details of the surplus and the trade agreement and all that stuff. But again, Carney is sitting right there looking at Trump, and he's saying, we don't want Canadian cars. We do not want Canadian aluminum. We do not want Canadian steel, because they want to bring all those jobs back to America. And yes, as Canadians, it would be annoying because going, oh, well, he's actively attacking all of our industry. Absolutely. It's threatening to Canadian jobs, the Canadian economy, and the economic future. But when you see he's just trying to bring jobs to America, we have to respect that the American leader is going to try and do what's best for America. He just said in an interview he wants to enter the American golden age, and in his focus, and I wanted to talk about that in another video, you can see he cares way more about the next generation than Mark Carney does. I never, ever, ever hear Carney talking about young people. He doesn't talk about it. And Trump has made a huge point of really focusing on the young people and, again, allowing people to have that American dream again. Is it going to work? I don't know, but you can see the difference in their principles.
I assume they can. I will tell you that Trudeau, when I spoke to him, I used to call him Governor Trudeau. I think that probably didn't help his election. But when I spoke to him, I said, so why are we taking your cars? Why are we taking we want to make them ourselves. I mean, I said, and if the price of your cars went up, or if we put a tariff on your cars of 25%, what would that mean to you? He said, that would mean the end of Canada. He actually said that to me. And I said, that's a strange answer, but I understand his answer.
That's a strange answer.
No, I mean, it's hard to justify.
Talk about a strong negotiation tactic. What would happen if we got rid of your cars? That would be the end of Canada. Please, please, please do not do that. Like, yeah, great negotiation skills, Trudy.
Subsidizing Canada to the tune of maybe $200 billion a year. We protect Canada militarily, and we always will. We're going to, that's not a money thing. But we always will. But, it's not fair. But why are we subsidizing Canada $200 billion a year, or whatever the number might be? It's a very substantial number.
Not subsidizing. And that's one thing that I will keep pushing back on Trump for, too, because it's to say subsidizing Canada for $200 billion because of the trade deficit. I don't know. It's not right, Trunk.
And it's hard for the American taxpayer to say, gee whiz, we love doing that. Thank you very much.
You can clearly see Carney wanted to answer at the end there. He kept raising his hands. Trump abruptly ends the meeting, and then they go into their meeting where they actually met without the press, the closed door meeting. But if you made it this far in the video, you absolutely rock. Don't forget to sign up for Wealth Simple. It is in the link below. You get $25. I get $25. Let's take on the big banks. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Gets these videos in front of more people, helps the channel grow, and have a great rest of your day.